Okay, but now you guys have a deal with Elektra, right?
Right.
You have a record out on Elektra, and now that you're on Elektra, do you think that are you going to do your next album the same way, or are you going to now like fly to the Bahamas and go in a big studio and do all that?
Yeah, now we're going to
stuff?
record the next album in Maui, 48-track studio.
Yeah. Glad to hear it.
Now
Okay,
we want to get like Michael Bolton's backing band.
good.
In 3 years, Ween had released 3 studio albums: Gobween Satan, The Pod, and Pure Guava, each supplying listeners with their own twisted brand of noise rock goodness. Ween had seemingly settled into a niche, that of prolific lo-fi grab bag bands like Guided by Voices or Sebadoh. But as the years went by, Ween began to push boundaries. Songs like Demon Sweat from The Pod and Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy from Pure Guava showcased a newfound sincerity and technical prowess. And Ween's live gigs began to balloon in length, with the band introducing new compositions featuring sprawling solos and complex harmonies.
Totally progressive.
It seemed Ween was growing into something very different, while still keeping in the spirit of their old material. As 1994 rolled around, it seemed that Gene and Dean were finally maturing. Well, maybe maturing isn't quite the right word.
We're Ween.
What's a Ween?
We're a band, you know.
Out of nowhere, out of the total musical vacuum, out of total darkness, comes one ray of light. And it's fucking Ween.
Before I get into the history of Ween's boundary-pushing, genre-defying opus of a 4th album, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it's Pat. Pat O'Neill Riley was an SNL character created by Julia Sweeney. The entire breadth and width of the joke is that nobody knows what gender Pat is.
I think you'd make a really great father role model.
But if you think that sounds like a one-off, you'd be dead wrong, because Pat had 12 sketches over 3 years at SNL. And that wasn't all, because in the age of Wayne's World, Touchstone Pictures, which is Disney by the way, decided Pat should get an entire movie. Despite direction from the legitimately talented Adam Bernstein, a great cast, and a pretty cool soundtrack, It's Pat is, in my estimation, unfortunately a dud. But Ween weren't merely on the soundtrack of It's Pat. They were in the movie.
Pat, aren't you?
Oh, who wants to know?
Oh, we're Ween.
What's a Ween?
We're a band, you know. That's Gene Ween and I'm Dean Ween, you know. Like Simon and Garfunkel, Peaches and Herb.
It's kind of sad you got stuck with that name.
Not only that, they're a plot point early on, and a Ween gig is the setting of the film's climax. I only mention It's Pat because, believe it or not, the movie was kind of a big deal in certain sectors, with even Quentin Tarantino contributing to the script at points. And I'm sure that for at least one person, It's Pat was their intro into the wonderful world of Ween. Before I dive into the recording of Ween's 4th album, I'd like to thank author Hank Shteamer for his entry in the 33 1/3 series on Chocolate and Cheese. His access to first-hand accounts from the band is unparalleled, making it one of the best documented periods in Ween history, and this video would be impossible without his work. In 1993, Ween moved. After recording demos for the new album at Graphic Sound Studio outside of New Hope, Ween took their payment from Elektra and moved into an office space in Pennington, New Jersey. The office had formerly been a telemarketing operation, and it was still surrounded by 2 working businesses. On the left was a functioning dentist's office, to the right a Comcast studio, and in between them was Ween. Day and night, Ween would blast a wall of sound while recording, leading Gene to say, if we weren't the only ones occupying the space at the time, then we were soon to be. Adding to the sound was the return of live drums to the recording process, which had been absent since Gobween Satan because of their neighbors at the pod. Claude Coleman, who had played gigs with them live, was brought in to record drums on what Ween dubbed the most important stuff. At risk of getting ahead of myself, a healthy amount of drum machine is still present on songs like Spinal Meningitis and Candy, but songs like Freedom of 76 showcase just how much space opens up when a real drummer gets behind the kit. In addition to live drums, the session saw a real bass player perform on the album, in the form of Andrew Weiss, Ween's longtime producer. Ween also brought in session musicians for various tracks, leading to Chocolate and Cheese being the band's biggest and most collaborative effort yet. It was also Ween's first time re-recording demos, rather than just putting the first version on the final album. That said, a few demos did make it onto the final project, if the performance was considered strong enough. Of the recording conditions, Claude remembers, "It was just this large room, totally crammed with gear, haphazardly strewed about everywhere. And in the middle of it all was this gigantic console with Andrew Weiss behind it. It was just a real fun, real free way to make music." Andrew Weiss might have disagreed. These sessions marked the first time Ween recorded in a digital, albeit still physical format, that being ADAT, a VHS tape recording format. Andrew Weiss would control the recording and playback with a computer, long before the days of user-friendly DAWs. Because of the trailblazing nature of the hardware used, the recording process was plagued by a myriad of technical issues, which nearly caused Weiss to tear his hair out. In addition, Gene and Dean initially weren't happy with the sound they were getting, preferring the warm analog sound of tape to the new ADAT. After countless technical issues and annoying the neighbors with sound pollution and trashing up the building, a cloud of paranoia soon descended over the recording process. Dean recalls getting out of his car and running inside each day to avoid seeing anyone. But despite all the setbacks, not only did these sessions produce a respectable 16-song tracklist, but also a wealth of fully mixed outtakes, 11 of which would later be released on the album's 30th anniversary edition. On September 27, 1994, Elektra Records released Ween's fourth studio album, Chocolate and Cheese.
Freedom of the body.
For many people, the elephant in the room in regards to Chocolate and Cheese is the cover. Featuring a woman with the most cropped a top can be, it feels like Ween has taken the macho sex sells method of album promotion. So you might be surprised to learn that originally the person featured was going to be an overweight sailor. As always, it's one extreme or the other for Ween. Adorning the waist of the woman is a wrestling belt, embellished with the likeness of the Boognish. For many years after the photo shoot, Ween thought this one-of-a-kind prop was lost, but Dean eventually revealed that he had quietly bought it and is now, once again, the owner of a piece of history. The title is also an interesting choice. It came to the band when they were thinking about Europe's greatest exports, chocolate and cheese. The phrase also works to describe the album, which contains both sugary sweet and smooth songs, as well as carb-rich cheesy tracks of the usual Ween fare. But let's talk about the ingredients of this feast, starting with... Take Me Away is a trumpet sounding, hearkening in the reign of the new Ween. It's presented as a recording of a Doors-esque lounge act, complete with crowd walla and frequent thanks given to the audience. Take Me Away also showcases a new confidence in Jeaner's voice. Gone is the sniveling fake machoism of Godwin Satan. These guys know that they're good. And on that note, Diener is tearing the guitar to shreds on this track, with probably his greatest solo yet. They've taken the training wheels off. God help us all. And if you were worried about the sonic about face, the next track, Spinal Meningitis, harkens back to pure guava, with Verisped vocals and a drum machine, but there's a darker bent to the comedy than usual. As the narrator, a child on death's door, sings to his mother, you can't help but empathize with him. This is no Eddie Dingle. Then there's Freedom of 76, a piece of blissful Philly soul sound. Jeaner soars in glorious falsetto as Diener, Claude, and Andrew lay down the goods. At the end of the day, it's a love letter to Philadelphia, even if it acknowledges the city's flaws. Freedom also had a music video directed by legendary filmmaker Spike Jonze. Overall, a good intro for the uninitiated. Speaking of music videos, next is I Can't Put My Finger on It. Maybe Ween's most iconic video sees Gene manning a Euro stand as he assaults the audience with questions. Meanwhile, Diener goes for a walk on the beach. It's a beautiful night for that, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would say that. I would say that.
The song itself is a catchy noise rock number with epic Mediterranean flair. It also has one of the best drops in a Ween song.
Yeah.
Can't put my finger on it.
That was Can't Put My Finger on It by Ween from our Chocolate and Cheese Triple Zinc album that just came out.
Great falafels that day, huh?
Yeah, no. That's a hell of a video. That's a video.
I'm just gonna keep giving the thumbs up the whole show here. Thumbs up.
Anyway.
A Tear for Eddie is a sprawling Diener instrumental dedicated to the late Funkadelic guitarist Eddie Hazel. Shades of Frank Zappa's Easter Hay are on full display. Roses Are Free is a demented psych pop number popularized by jam band Fish. Sonically, it brings to mind tracks like Don't Laugh I Love You, and is another reminder that Ween can still get brown. Baby Bitch is one of the demos that the band opted to fast track to the album. A sequel of sorts to Birthday Boy, it acts to voice the bitterness you feel after the sadness of a heartbreak has faded away. And it might just be one of Jeaner's best compositions of all time. Mr. Would You Please Help My Pony is a fun but really dissonant number about a pony with a thick lung. It also houses one of Andrew's best bass lines. Next is Drifter in the Dark, a country western track done in such earnest that it's easy to see Ween's love for the genre. It seems an unlikely pairing, but Ween and country just makes sense, much like chocolate and cheese. Voodoo Lady is a funk rock banger with a haunting noise interlude for a solo. The song had a music video directed by Roman Coppola, which is probably my favorite of theirs. Voodoo Lady is also a track that's had a second life on stage, housing some of Diener's greatest solos of all time. Chopper Road is an easy-listening, almost yacht rock track, with another great Weiss bass line, and yet another unreal Diener solo. Then there's Candy, another song that feels like a guava holdover, being without a doubt the brownest track on Chocolate and Cheese. The lead vocals come courtesy of Mean Ween, with occasional distorted backup vocals popping in here and there. These were recorded by Jeaner, who was locked in the trunk of a car while Diener did donuts in the icy parking lot outside the office park. That fact alone is enough to make this one of my favorite tracks on the album. Buenos Tardes Amigo is a sprawling western murder ballad, with a twist. It's by far the longest song on Chocolate and Cheese, but it more than earns its length with just how epic the narrative is. Then there's the HIV song, another demo, and another disease-based track. The HIV song is a demented piece of carnival music with a ludicrous hook that, somehow, someway, has become an all-time fan favorite. What Diener was talking about is maybe the sweetest cut off the album. Just a solid pop rock number with a memorable hook mirrored by the solo. It's short but powerful and feels like a warm hug every time. Finally, there's Don't Sh** Where You Eat, a come-down track and another acoustic song with country stylings. Man, they should really just make a whole album of those. One thing that was clear was that Chocolate and Cheese was more eclectic than ever. Their first 3 albums definitely featured a variety of styles, but they were all kind of under the umbrella of lo-fi. Now, in the new studio setting, we were able to more faithfully emulate the genres of each respective song, showcasing their vast assortment of influences like never before. In short, Chocolate and Cheese told the world that Ween was no longer in the business of fringe parody. They were good enough to stand alongside their peers as producers, performers, and as songwriters.
Buddha. 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 Buddha.
In June of 1994, well before the album released, Ween was already on the road supporting the album. The first 5 legs of the Chocolate and Cheese tour saw Gene and Dean joined by Weiss and Coleman, for the first time consistently touring as a full band. Leg 5 saw the band return to Europe, to disastrous results. In '97, Diener was quoted as saying, "Absolutely the worst tour that we've ever done. I think we've toured Europe 4 times, and America probably 7 or 8 times, but this was us at our lowest, most drunken, unhealthy state. We had a British tour manager. I probably shouldn't talk about him, he might see it. Our tour started off, we didn't sleep for 2 days, then we drove to Milan from London to play. We sat upright in the car and didn't sleep for 2 days straight, then the next day got into an accident in the mountains of northern Italy. He drove away, so we got busted when we got to the Swiss border, because they were waiting for us. Somehow, we ended up in Cologne. I heard when we got back there, we won an award for the worst interview ever in the history of EuroTV." Regardless of how the boys were feeling, European fans and new converts ate it up, and Ween's sphere of international influence only grew. For Leg 6, and maybe due in part to the trauma from Leg 5, Ween stripped it back to basics. Weiss stepped back from playing with the band for the foreseeable future, and Claude just plain needed a break. Gene and Dean performed as a twosome for 13 domestic shows, several of which found the Ween brothers opening for Foo Fighters as they promoted their debut album.
Foo Fighters.
Foo Fighters. Ladies and gentlemen, Foo Fighters.
As the Chocolate and Cheese tour wrapped up, Ween had already recorded their next album. Though the few tracks from the new album that they teased live were all country, Chocolate and Cheese had a couple country-inspired songs. It was assumed that this was just one of the genres Ween would tackle in their next bout. But after the release of Chocolate and Cheese, Mark Sutherland of NME had given the album a mixed review, and his advice may well have penetrated the minds of Gene and Dean Ween. Of the album, he wrote, "More like a very odd compilation than a proper coherent album," and wondered why Ween don't just stop mucking around and record an entire album's worth of similar gems. As I'm sure you're well aware at this point, Ween was never one to shy away from a challenge.
Pat, those aren't hallucinogenic mushrooms. They're from Safeway.